Hey, welcome back to Posty TV. So I just want to continue on with the engine build, the full engine build. So I'm waiting on a few parts to turn up, but I know there's a few of you that are sort of in the process of doing this build. So what I wanted to do was show you basically, I've got another engine here, I've got a casing, which I'll show you in a second, but I want to go through just a basic last pieces of pulling the casing apart, and the gears and the gear selectors and so forth, because I think it's going to be useful for when we come to put it all back together. It's something that honestly I still have to check and double check as I do it. It's not just an easy thing, and if you're doing it every day it'd be fine, but so basically I use it as a bit of a reference to putting the thing back together as well. I'm hoping that by showing you this will make it easier for you when you come to put it back together, or when we put it back together on the video. It just makes it a bit more, fresh in our mind. So I can show you the engine. What I'm going to do is I'm basically pull the parts of either side off. I've already taken off the clutch because there's plenty of videos on how to do the clutch. And remove the primary drives quite easy, so that's going to show you, you're going to see that on those other videos. Take the flywheel off, there's plenty of videos on how to get the flywheels off, there's flywheel tools and stuff like that. So this is after you've done that. This is sort of the next step, and then again this will help us when it comes time to put the gearbox in. Okay, so I'll put you down, hopefully it won't bounce you around too much with this camera setup. So this is the engine that I've got there. So this is just a old engine I've got lying around. Big end's no good on this one. It's got a huge amount of play in the conrod, so it's one of those ones I'll get to one day. But for now, it's probably a really good one to explain or show you what's going on. So we've got our gear selector through here. With an arm comes back through. There's pins on this drum, and as you select the gear, this arm goes forwards and backwards, turning this drum, which selects the gears inside. And that's done by turning this drum. It's got these two prongs, and as you turn it, they open up and close up, and they slide the gears up and down. So I'm just sort of trying to explain everything. I know a lot of guys probably know all this stuff, but some don't, and I sort of think it's useful information. So what I normally do first, and I won't do it all on camera because I'll shake you around too much, I'm going to remove this arm. So this is an arm with a little roller on the end. This is spring loaded. There's a spring that goes through here, hooks up. As this drum turns, that spring comes down and then goes back up. It follows the lumps on the drum, and what it does by putting pressure back on the keyways or the lumps, it makes sure that it goes into gear where you want it to be. It sort of makes sure you get that definite lock into gear, and also when you're doing this, when you're changing gears, when you test it on the bench, you need to turn your main drive or primary drive, just to make sure that you get the gears to select. They won't just go through the gears without it spinning. You need to spin it so that it will change gears. I actually learned that the hard way the first time I did it. Put an engine back together, I'm changing the gears, going, why is this not working? Well, because it's a wet clutch or centrifugal clutch, everything's sort of moving on the bike. Obviously the chain, even though it's not in gear, still spinning that front sprocket. So when you do that, it's going to turn all the gears, and that's, it won't change gears unless it does that. So so I'm going to take this spring-loaded arm off, then I'm going to undo this 10mm here, and then I'm going to take this little locator, we can call it, take that off, and there's some pins underneath there, and we'll see that. So what I'll do is I'll just take that off, and I'll come back to you in a second. Okay, so I've just undone them. Just show you this. This is a little arm with a roller on it. One thing to do when you're checking your engine, is this roller can get damaged and out of shape, and of course that's not going to help. So it's a part that you can buy easily, and that will help. So if you can see, there's a little spring here, sits up against the back of the motor. It's got a lever there. That goes on that spring and then pushes down, and then you put the nut on it. That nut's got a special sort of ridge on it so that it sits in into there, and it locates it, and it's the same size so that this will spin freely once the bolt's tightened up. This engine is in a neutral position, so the way I have to remember it is this locator here is pointing down to this lump, whatever that thing is there, which is actually the back side of the primary drive, of the front sprocket drive. So that flatter side of that heads there, and I'll grab that and show you now. There's 2 pins there, so I'm going to just slide him off. If I can, there he's off. So see how it's got that. It's different. That bit points to here. That's neutral position, and there's 2 pins, and those pins are basically horizontal across. So if you look at that, you can see the holes. If that's there, that's where those pins are on your drum. Again, this is just so that when we're putting it back, or you have any issues, it's not changing gears properly, we can come back and have a look at this and go, okay, well, those pins are there. Another thing, there's 4 pins on the drum itself. 1 pin is raised slightly. The rest of them are flush, and this one's raised slightly, and that's the one that's at the back of the engine, this being the front, and the head, cylinder and head goes here. So the one that's raised goes to the back. Just basic stuff. Like, I don't want to bore everyone, but if you're pulled it apart and you got bits everywhere, that might help you. So, and then what I do is, it's quite easy to take out the gear selector on the lever. So I'll push the arm down here. Actually, I'll take that spring out as well. So that was the spring that sits on that little arm. And I'll slide this out. Sorry, I'm shaking too much. Same thing, when I take this out, I'll look at how it's going. The fork here, and the springs and everything, well, that's facing, again, to that same reference point that I used for the top. So I've got that facing to it, and that flat part of there facing to it. I know I'm doing it right. Simple things that I just use to help me when I put it together. So I'm going to pull that whole assembly out together. If you don't need to pull that apart, leave it as it is. Jared, who gave me this engine, has done a great job of putting everything in a Ziploc bag as it was. Just takes, even though I've done it a fair few times, just takes the hassle out, and I don't have to really go through it. And it also means we can just slide that back in. So for this engine, we'll put him over here. So basically that's the engine here. This is the oil pump here. We'll do a bit more on that later on. We're going to sort of have a look at that and place the gaskets and stuff in that. But for now, it's in there. We don't need to pull it apart to split the casing. So the other thing is, there's a little, you're probably well aware of this one, there's a strainer down the bottom here for the engine oil strainer. Something that you clean out, take out and clean out when you do oil change, or when you've got doing the clutch and you've got the engine apart. It's a good idea to clean that out. So we'll take that out so it doesn't get damaged. Okay, that's basically this side of the engine. I'll flip around and show you the other side. Alrighty, so this is the other side now. I'll just show you, take the spring out of this cam chain tensioner. So this is a cam chain tensioner here. It's got a rubber stopper on there. That goes onto this ring tensioner here, and that's got a roller here. And as you can see, when I move that, it pushes that piston back down, and that's what tensions your cam chain. there's normally a locking nut that goes on here. Once you get it down to the right position, you sort of lock it off when you get the tension right. There's a 14mm nut here, cover, take that off. And then there's a flathead screwdriver, which I'm taking out now. All for that. Okay, there's that cup, and that's what you tension with the flathead screwdriver to get the spring tension right. There's a spring, and I'm just throwing all this for this engine in a different container. Now, this rubber stopper's had a bit of a hard life. It's not quite what it normally looks like. It's normally just a rounded thing, but there is a flat section on this piston, and when you install it, make sure that that flat side, if you can see that flat side, lines up with this tensioning bolt so that when you tension it, it clamps down on the flat section rather than on the rounded side. That just makes sure you get a better sort of grab. So that's just a little thing that no one sort of tells you, but yeah, you can see there's a flat side there. That's round, so make sure that that flat side is pointing here. Don't really need to take that out to do the split the case, but I do. This is the oil pump cover. There's no oil pump drive in here, it's been taken out. So there's no need to take that out, and there's no need to take this out, because this is an engine that, as I say, one day I'll get around to rebuilding it for someone. So basically that's almost it. Now there's only one 10mm bolt up here, and that is the other side of that gear selector drum that we took that cover off before. So a lot of people, myself included, have probably left that on when we first tried to pull the engine case apart. And then you eventually find out why the engine case isn't coming apart. It's because of this. One other thing I will mention is on the gear drum that goes through, there's a copper plate. This is where the neutral sensor goes in on your starter cover, and it will go in here. That neutral sensor's got a pin on the end, and that lines up with that copper plate. Pardon me. So when it's in the right position in neutral, that copper plate will be underneath this hole, and that's what sends the signal to tell you that you're in neutral. So if you're putting it together and you want to know if you're in neutral or not, that's a good way to know. The copper plate's in there. So it's just spun around a bit. As done. The other thing to mention too is when I was talking about those pins before on the other side, just be careful they don't slide out on you, because they're not stuck in, so they will fall out of that drum. See if I can pull one out. There's one of the little guys there. So that's come out of my drum. I'm going to put that back from where he came. I'm going to try and leave him in there. So I'm just undo this 10mm. And I'm probably telling a lot of people that know how to suck eggs at the moment, and they probably know all this, but a lot of people don't, so just trying to avoid them learning the hard way. So that bolts out. There's a washer there. That's a 10mm on the other side of the drum, so I'm going to throw that in my little kit. So now, depending on if you've got a 6 or a 12 volt, there'll be some 8mm bolt heads to undo. You've got an older engine, it's going to be some Phillips head. You've got the Phillips head. You're going to use one of these impact drivers to undo them, which is what I'm going to do now. I'll come back once I've flipped it over and undone the screws, and I'll show you how I position the motor when I split the case. Alrighty, so I've taken out those Phillips head screws. This being an older 6-volt engine. And it's all apart now. So I've given the casing a bit of a tap. This has been apart, so it wasn't much of an issue to get it apart. Just be careful, you're going to be jamming screwdrivers and stuff in here, you're going to damage it. So with the right wiggle, it will come out fairly easily. So if it's not coming out easily, maybe you've overlooked a bolt, or you know, a really old engine might need a bit more of a tap around the outside of a rubber mallet or something just to break that seal. So this one should come apart. I'm going to put a screwdriver in there, and I just use that to sort of help me get it up evenly. So I can tell that the front's quite free, but the back, where most of the gearbox and everything is, where the gearbox is, needs a bit more love. So also trying not to shake the camera around too much as well. Okay, what I should have probably done before I did that was explain why the engine's on the way that it is. Gasket was in great condition. I always set it down with a kickstart, clutch side down. I've got this sitting on another engine casing, just so that when I take it apart, I haven't got pressure on the kickstart, because that will just push everything up and out where I don't want it to be. So basically, if you do it the clutch side down, you're going to end up with the gearbox the way you want it to be. So what I'll do in the next video when we do the other engine, so this is the case I just pulled off. I'll put in a pile of bits. This is our nice new engine we're building. We've got the gearbox sort of sitting in there now. It was when I was putting that together, I was like, I want to show you how this does come apart, because it will help you. So I'm going to see that's that little copper thing I was telling you about. So there's a hole there, that slides over, it's got a little tab here, and that tab pushes, it's sort of spring loaded. When it comes around, it gets this neutral selector, which it's in there somewhere. So I can find that. I'll explain that when we put it back together. So that's pretty much it. As far as I know, these engines aren't any different between 6 and 12 volt at this point. The only time that they change is when we get to flywheel. That is a 12 volt, that is a 6 volt flywheel. 12 volt has a pickup on the outside, 6 volt has pickups on the inside, none on the outside. A little bit different on the back as well. 6 volt has a spacer plate, no one doesn't, so not too different. The ignition module at the head, there is no ignition module on the head for the 12 volt, because that pickup on the outside is the ignition module on the 12 volt. The 6 volt has it separately up on the head. The stator cover is different. Probably should have got all this stuff out before I started doing this. So that is a 6 volt, only has 4 points in there, pickups in there. It's pretty much completely round on the outside. Pretty similar, but this is a 12 volt. It's got this lump at the front of it. And that lump is where the pickup screws in to read that little notch on the outside of the fibre, and that's the ignition module. So that's why it's got a bit more of a lump on the front of it. Flip it around. All right. Again, we'll go into more detail when we get closer. Probably running over time, so that is basically how to split the engine apart. When we put the new gearbox in here, we'll go through and we'll use this as a reference point. And again, as I said, that I'm hoping that this will help us, you know, understand it a bit better and make it clearer for you guys, because I was trying to work out how to explain as I put that back together, and I was struggling to work out how I could make that clear and easy. So I think by doing this, I can make it a bit more understanding. All right, I'll stop boring there. I'll get this all tidied up, and we'll be back soon with our next one, which will be fitting the gearbox in there and going forward. Thanks for watching. Bye.